Welcome to selfdiscoveryradio.com, where the orchard of wisdom is just ready for picking. We celebrate your why, the journey that you've taken that inspires someone else. We support your services, we support your story. Come and be our guest, become a host, be an author with us. Come and see what we've got. Our next show is... Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Choose Positive Living. I am your host, Sara Troy, and my guest today, who is talking about life is stressful, we need to have more love and less conflict. We are talking about Jonathan Robinson. What an interesting topic, right? Isn't it something that we need at this present moment? More love, less conflict. Why do we buy into the conflict? Why is this word love too wooey-wooey? And we kind of think that it's something that, love, what's love got to do with it? It's got everything to do with it, folks. And conflict is something that we choose to embrace. Yes, it could be around us, but we do not have to embrace it. Jonathan is a psychotherapist. He's a best-selling author of 10 books and a professional speaker in Northern California. He's reached over 250 million people around the world with his practical methods. And his books have been translated into 47 languages. So in other words, his word is getting around. So we have a lot of wisdom here today to dive into, and let's dive into it. And really, how do we step out of conflict, Jonathan, and embrace the love?
Well, the first step really is to know that there's simple methods that actually work. You know how this little thing is getting better every single year. And the same is true of communication methods, but most people don't know what they are. You know, a lot of people are using methods of 4,000 years ago.
Okay, so, we had a little hiccup there. So could you just repeat that sentence, please,
Sure. A lot of people are using methods of communication that they used 4,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the good news is that if you know the right method, you can end a fight, or you can get over the polarization that's now happening, or you can come to an agreement in literally a minute or two, rather than spend 5 hours arguing with somebody.
Right. I think it's the techniques, isn't it? People just don't know how to, but first reaction is to react, to get up in arms over something. And it's how do you take that breath and just slow down before you react. And it's those tools and those skills, people don't realize they are there. And when applied, you can step away from that conflict before you get immersed into it. Because once you're immersed into it, it can spiral out of control.
Exactly. In my More Love, Less Conflict book, I have about 40 techniques, and probably 30 of them take under 20 seconds. Mm-hmm. Because I'm lazy, and if something takes a while, I probably won't do it. So I'll give you one example. Here's a method that takes 2 seconds, and it works really well. And that is, if you're starting to get into an argument with your mate or a partner, either you can say the word red light. And when you say red light, that means that we have to take a 5-minute break from talking with each other. You can do whatever you want during those 5 minutes, but you're no longer letting the momentum of upset get you into an argument. So, my wife and I used to argue 20 years ago when we got married. We haven't had an argument in 4 years, because if we're starting to get upset, we'll just say red light. We'll take a couple-minute timeout, and then we can get back to a rational conversation.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? Time out. We used to give that with our kids. Go and think about it, into the corner. And it's time to kind of pause. What am I reacting to? What was just said or done that has upset me? How can I articulate this in a way that's not argumentative? And is it even really worth bringing up? And it's only that time out and that pause that you can actually gather your thoughts and your feelings and then come back to the table in a far more rational manner. But if we don't do that, everything's going to be reactionary, and things are going to be said or done that we regret.
Well said. Well said. And you want to not only learn how to end conflict or resolve it, but you also want to know how to add love, because as you said, love is probably the most important thing we're here for.
Yeah.
And yet, most people don't know that they can literally double the amount of love that they feel in any given day in literally a minute or less of effort if they know the right method. because we're not focused on love. Most of us, we're focused on, just dealing with the day and stress and making a living. But it doesn't need to take a long time if you know how to do it.
Well, that love has to come from self, right? Tina Turner, what's love got to do with it? Everything, everything. And you can't find love or look for love or even invite love if that love is not first internally in you. So it is an inside job. It doesn't matter who you are, how rich, famous, or whatever, you have to go in and find that self-love, love of life, love of purpose. It's all resides within you. When you do step into that, that's what you're resonating out, and you're more likely to invite that love, aren't you?
Absolutely. But, I'm good with finding love however people find it. And I think some people find it in different ways. I meditate every day, so I definitely connect with how you can find it within yourself. But, if you have ever had a relationship where it's just going really, really well, there's a resonance, and that back and forth can lead to you feeling more love, even in the relationship, not so much in yourself. So there's a lot of different ways. You can find a lot of love with your dog.
Yeah, oh yes.
Or your cat. So, or love of nature. So there's a lot of different paths to it. And I think people have to find the paths that work really well and really easily for them.
You've got a beautiful backdrop here of trees and the forest. And, people don't realize how much nature really does speak to our psyche. And it really is a calming effect. And very often, I talk to the trees and they talk back to me. The rustle of the leaves, that vibration, if you're open to it, is that nature will always have that answer. The sound of the waves of the sea, they're so calming, they're so nurturing. The tweets of the birds, there's so much out there that can just bring us to a place of love. And as you said, if you step in to the love around us, it helps us ignite that love within us.
Yeah, I luckily have been on the Oprah Winfrey show a bunch of times. And, I don't know if you know Oprah's story, but she was really, really poor, never lived in a house that had running water. She was raped at age 11 and then raped again at age 14, had a stillborn child. This is not somebody who sounds like a success story.
Right.
And now she is actually the most loved person on the planet. So one of the times I was on her show, I asked her, how did that happen? And she said, well, I made a vow that I would show my love for people every single day.
Yeah.
And she said, looks like that turned out pretty good.
Yes. It was reciprocated.
It was.
Really, bottom line is that we all wish to be loved and have something and someone to love. We want to love our job in order to do it well and to get up every day and be happy to go to our job. We want to love our spouse to come home to, our children, our dog, our home. We really are completely wired to love and step into love on every arena. And if we choose to do that, and not give the conflict the energy, but give the love the energy, we really can find love in every corner, can't we?
Yeah, I think people know that, but what they don't know is the very precise method for doing that.
Right.
You know the theory, but I think, to become a psychotherapist, I had to take a year of geometry, algebra, trigonometry, and calculus, but I never had to take a class on communication.
Wow.
Which is weird.
Yes, definitely.
And most people, if you ask them to do a lecture on everything they know about good communication, they've done studies of this, and that lecture lasts an average of 93 seconds.
Wow.
Now, considering we're communicating all the time, and communication is the key to relationships and love, it's a shame that we only have a minute and a half of useful information.
It's very sad.
It is sad.
Very sad.
Now think of what happens to the person who happens to have 30 minutes of useful information. That looks like they can levitate because they just know a lot more ways of connecting that other people don't know. Like I have a website, morelovelessconflict.com, and I have 12 questions that lead to instant intimacy. If you ask any one of these questions, you get to intimacy right away, and people can get that for free. Now, what's interesting about intimacy is the words has the instruction in it, into me see.
Yes. Yes.
When you reveal stuff about yourself in a vulnerable way, that starts to help create intimacy between two people. So I created these 12 questions that instantly lead to that. And people need little helpers like that, because we're all so busy and distracted nowadays that unless you have those little helpers, you get caught up in stuff.
It's when we're going somewhere, we go and put on the Google map to know where we're going, right? And how to get there. Is it bus? Is it walk? Is it vehicle? We have all that information at our fingertips, yet we don't seem to have that information when it comes to communicating. And it's not just communicating with other people. Very often we don't even know how to dialogue with ourselves or listen to ourselves.
Yeah.
I find most people today, and I am going to say the younger, attention span is very short. If you haven't got their attention at the snap of the finger, they're not going to listen to you. Most of my audience are older because they now realize the wisdom in listening longer than the 90 seconds and truly getting immersed in the knowledge. Do you think it is an age thing, or do you think it's become a societal thing that everything has become so instant? If I can't communicate in 90 seconds, I'm going to shut down.
Well, I think it is part of our the culture we live in, or the culture we live in, which is a situation where, in 2000, they did a study and showed that people's attention span on average was 21 seconds. And they did it last year, and they found out that the attention span is now 8 seconds.
Oh, that's horrible.
And, goldfish have an attention span of 9 seconds. So that's not so good.
No.
Yes.
That's scary, actually.
It is.
Very scary.
We have these things, I call them WMDs, not weapons of mass destruction, but widgets of mass distraction. And that's why we need more help to get to the intimacy and the deep conversation that we're really after, because we have more distractions than ever before. And if you don't have these little helpers, you can sometimes not have a meaningful conversation for days or weeks.
Right.
People rely on Facebook now, but 1,000 Facebook friends does not equal one really good friend.
No. And that one really good friend wants to be spoken to more than 8 seconds. If that's interaction. And how can you develop interaction or participation if your attention span is 8 seconds? How can you even hope to learn what you need to learn in order to evolve in your own life? And do you think that lack of engagement, we've become such an instant society where everything is instant, and this gratification has to be, one push button away, that we've pushed people too far that way? I mean, it's great to have all of these tools, but we've got to remember they're tools. We are still the biggest tool in our lives, and we have to, use this tool and interact and communicate with people. We have to participate in our own lives. And it's so easy to push a button and abstain from that.
Yeah, I agree. I think what the easiest remedy is that you actually, quote, push a button, and you actually create a avenue to get into that depth and intimacy. Because if you have a choice between a push button entertainment, which we all do, and not knowing how to reliably get to a place of depth and intimacy within a short period of time, you'll choose the easy one.
Yes.
So I've tried to make it just as easy for people to get that satisfying sense of connection and depth and intimacy. And therefore, if you have a choice between a stupid TV show and a real connection with a human being, then you'll probably choose the real connection.
Yes, exactly. I think we're all hungry for that real connection, aren't we? I think a lot of disconnect is happening out there, and that's why people are feeling lost, because quite essentially we're a village, we're a tribe, we need each other. We're pack type beings. And this segregation is what causes a lot of discontent and the inability to communicate with other people, which we're hungry to do.
Yeah. One way people are often asking, well, what are you talking about? Like, what is an example of the method? I have like 40 in the book, but let me give a couple just so people have a sense of what I'm talking about. I think one of the most important things people want is appreciation and empathy. So, for example, if we shared I don't know you for very long, but already I can see things that I appreciate about you.
Thank you.
Now, if I say those things, I'll give an example, we'll immediately feel more connected. Now, people actually don't say appreciations very often.
No.
And in fact, the number one predictor of how happy a couple is the amount of appreciations they say to each other. So something I appreciate about you, Sara, is that I can tell that you're really passionate about this subject and really interested in learning and helping people reach a deeper place of connection.
Throwing the ball back in your court, I really do appreciate that you have the information that helps us empower ourselves and our society. And there's a lot of appreciation that we can step into as gratitude as well, right? When you appreciate someone, you're grateful for what they impart. But if you're not willing to give them the time to hear what they have to say, how are you going to know how to appreciate them?
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story about gratitude. I have a friend who went to India to see a guru, and he got this, quote, magical mantra that helped him to feel overwhelming gratitude for his wife. And I thought that was a good thing because it's easy to take somebody for granted. I said, would you tell me what the mantra is? He said, no, you're going to have to go to India to get it. Oh, damn. Okay. So I really wanted this technique because he said, his wife said it totally transformed their relationship. So I travel 18,000 miles to India, and then I take a rickshaw for 4 hours. I finally get to the ashram. There's a line to meet this holy person that's 4 hours long. I wait in line. I'm jet lagged. Finally get a chance to talk to him. I say, I hear you have this magical mantra for helping me feel overwhelming gratitude towards the people I care about. And he says in his Indian accent, yes, my mantra is the most powerful mantra on earth. And he leans in to whisper it into my ear. And he says, whenever possible, repeat the following words. The mantra I give you. Now, by now, I'm so excited that I'm like not even breathing because I want to make sure I get it correct. So he said, the mantra I give you are the words, thank you. I look at him, I figure he's joking, but he's not laughing. No. And I said, thank you, that's it? I traveled 18,000 miles to get thank you, that's it? And he says, no, that's it is the mantra you have been using, and that makes you feel like you never have enough. My mantra is thank you, not that's it. That's it will take you nowhere. Well, I was pretty pissed off and disappointed. So I kind of snidely say, well, thank you. And he says, thank you is not the mantra. You have to say it from your heart many times a day.
Yes.
Well, make a long story short, I started to actually say this from my heart when I saw my wife or when I saw my dogs. And internally, just saying thank you for her. And she said in the next 2 weeks, our relationship went from like an 8 to a 10 on a 1 to 10 scale.
There's the appreciation.
Yeah.
I'm seen, I'm heard, I count in your life. That's what that thank you says. Right? I mean, even in training my dog, I'll go for a walk. I didn't need to put her on a leash. And somebody was observing that every time she brought back a stick, I said, thank you. She said, you say thank you to your dog? Yes, I appreciate you brought the stick back to me. And she learns that gratitude. She may not understand the words, but she understands the love vibration behind it. She gets to know what that word means. And, same with the children. Thank you. I think it is a very powerful word. But yes, so many people, thanks. But when it's thank you, to you, I acknowledge you, I appreciate you, I'm in gratitude of you, that thank you becomes everything, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And there's lots of other things. I think that one of the main things people really hunger for is, I call it acknowledgement, but I guess you could call it empathy. That we really feel somebody else.
Yes. And
most people are really, really bad at giving that.
Yeah.
So Oprah is really, really good at giving that. That's why she has become the most loved person on earth.
Right.
I also got a chance to talk to the Dalai Lama for a book, and he was really empathetic. And it just felt so wonderful to talk to somebody who really gets you.
Yes.
and in the book, I talk about a lot of methods that are very, like fill in the blank methods are so simple that they immediately make relationships better. And in a way, it's good that most people don't know these methods, because if you learn them, you stand out.
Yeah. But that's okay. It's stand tall in your own life, stand out.
Yeah,
But the thing about Oprah, you know when you're successful when all of a sudden the Christian society is going after you and painting you as a demon, because everybody is looking at her beautiful philosophy and spirituality based in love and appreciation, right? And when it comes down to it, life is really, really quite simple. We like to overcomplicate things, but the gratitude, the appreciation, the simple thank you, coming from your heart, willing to be vulnerable. What do you say about that?
Well, as I mentioned, the word intimacy has the words into me see.
Mm-hmm.
And there's very little vulnerability in the world today. So if you have that gift, then you will really shine, because it's really a needed thing. We like people who are able to be very honest and vulnerable.
Yes.
We feel connected to them. And not many people can do that. So I personally am not good at vulnerability. So I have little things that help me.
Yeah.
Like, for example, a lot of my methods are like literally fill in the blank words. Like, I'm feeling nervous now, and what I'm wanting is for you to like me.
Mm-hmm.
That's vulnerability, and that was also true.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm feeling blank, what I'm wanting is blank. That's a pretty simple method.
Yes.
But my friends have said that in the last years I've used that method, they all feel a lot closer to me because I'm sharing that stuff, whereas I didn't used to.
Right. And it's we can't expect other people to be honest with us unless we're willing to be honest with self, right? Because again, what we project is what we're going to get out. And I find that inner honesty of admitting I am vulnerable, I am flawed, I'm beautifully imperfect, but I'm also love. And to be able to say it to yourself first and foremost is rather overwhelming. But then to actually have the courage to say it to others is very intimidating until it is appreciated, and then you feel the word validated, right? And which, of course, whether we like the word or not, we are looking for that validation, and that comes in the form of appreciation with a simple thank you.
Yeah. Well, everybody wants approval. Everybody really wants the same things in life. And one of the ways to get those things is you give them.
Yes.
If you want appreciation, you give it. If you want vulnerability, you give it. If you want, but you want to give it effectively.
Yeah.
Give you a story. I used to have my wife and I, many years ago, we've been married 20 years, but we had this problem where one day I'm giving her a shoulder massage, and she says, "Would you cut that out?" I go, "What?" She said, "Well, you're always massaging me. You're always grabbing me." And I said, "Well, this is to show you that I love you." And she said, "Well, I don't feel that love. You never tell me that you love me," which was true. And ends up, she would say that to me a lot. Now, when I was growing up, my stepfather, before he would hit me, he would say, "I'm doing this because I love you."
Oh,
so the words "I love you" meant I'm about to get hit.
Right.
Now, my wife, she had an uncle who used to massage her a lot. And when she was 14, she got sexually molested by him.
Yes, association.
So she took the massages as a sign of impending doom.
Right.
So we were both expressing love in the way we thought was the valid way, but it was actually triggering each other.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you express love effectively and efficiently in the way that your partner appreciates. And this is information most people don't know.
No, but it's also, as you said, you were doing it as a term of endearment. All right. And unable to say the word because of waiting for the hand to slap. She's looking at the massage as something, about out of her control is going to happen. But it's good that you could both stop. And I think we're so afraid in relationships to say, "I don't like that," or "it reminds me of something," because we don't want to be deemed as being ungrateful, because we know somebody's doing it from a state of love. But if we're not honest, it builds and builds and builds until it explodes unreasonably. So if there is something that's being done, I think that inner honesty, I know that you mean, I know you mean this from a place of love, but however, this is what happened. And then I think by even speaking about it, the next time you go to massage, it's diffused. She can now accept it coming from a place of love, as you can say, I love without worrying about the hit. But if we're not willing to converse, be vulnerable and talk about it in trust with our partners, it's always going to be that elephant in the room.
Yeah. And, little things can solve this immediately forever. That's what I love about these little communication skills. Just asking your partner, what helps you to feel really loved by me?
Right.
I mean, yes. That's not nuclear physics. No. But once I asked that of my wife and she told me, our relationship immediately got a lot better. Mm-hmm. Forever. Yes. Because now I know. I mean, that's literally a 10-second technique that has had impact for the last 19 years. Assumption
is very dangerous, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Trying to guess what somebody wants from you, assuming they want this or that. And sometimes that assumption comes from what you need, not necessarily what they need. So again, we have to go back to asking the question, because if we assume, it's going to go off track. Ask. Mm-hmm. But we're so afraid to ask. Why do you think that?
Well, it's not, we haven't been taught.
Right.
That's one thing. And we don't have a comfortable way of bringing it up. We don't know how, so that's why I wrote the book, is so that people would have a, really simple checklist. Let me ask, how do you feel loved? How about something even a little bit more risque? Like, what do you like in bed? Mm-hmm. We don't ask that.
Right.
Yes. That would be nice to know.
You can get intimate with a person, but God forbid you should talk about it.
Exactly.
I would think that this book is a great thing for each partner to read and then make notes and go, okay, what stood out for you in this book that we can talk about, that we can address with each other? Because it sounds a great deal like a manual, a how-to book, which people don't have. A lot of the problems is people do not have the knowledge on simply how to approach something. So having something that's very simple, that stands out. Oh yeah, this is a question, I didn't know how to ask that. Write it down, have a dialogue, even a question a night, talk about it on both sides of the thing. We've got to be willing to actually step into those exercises, don't we? Stop being embarrassed that you don't know. You're not meant to know everything. Be willing to learn the tools and apply them and say, honestly, when I read this, I didn't realize this. Have a conversation about it. So many barriers come down and so much more love is opened up because of that trust of communicating with each other.
Yeah, and the good news is it doesn't take two willing partners. Mm-hmm. I found that it only takes one who knows how to ask the question. Like, gee, Joe, what helps you to feel really loved by me? That doesn't take two people. Joe will answer that question because It's not that hard to answer.
Right.
So that's good news, because a lot of couples, they have one partner that's just not into this.
Yes.
But they are into getting more love and less conflict.
Right.
So if you say, hey, I have a question I'm curious about. What do you think of whatever? And that can immediately make a difference. And it doesn't require going to therapy. It doesn't require long talks. It doesn't require, when men hear the term, we need to talk,
they start running.
they know they're in trouble, and they know it's going to go on forever. So if you can say, hey, I'd like you just to answer this one question. It'll take 30 seconds, and it'll really help me to understand you. That sounds good.
That's easy. That's an easy solution.
Yeah.
And probably also so much more easy for them to directly respond.
Absolutely.
It's the last thing you want is that somebody's trying to get to something and they're going around the world a dozen times before they get to the point, because now are they going to do this, are they going to do that, and the anticipation just rises up. When they ask you, it just becomes out of proportion. So having a question that's straight to the point, that you're actually able to articulate back straight to the point, now that barrier's gone.
Yeah, absolutely. And a book actually makes it easier. As you can say, you can blame it on the book. Hey, this book has an interesting question. I was wondering, like that.
Yes. I think we're all looking for clarity in life, aren't we? We want to be very clear, and on who we are, how we're presenting ourselves, the relationships with others, where we stand. We're all looking for that identification, clarity, respect, appreciation. And it's to be seen, to be heard, but we're all in self-discovery of who we are. It's a lifelong journey. So we like to be clear on how we're coming across. And we also like to be clear on how somebody else is coming to us. We don't want people hiding behind either assumption or fear, because then that feels, why are you so afraid of me? Just ask.
Yeah, you know, as I said, it can be good news that we're not skilled in this area, because a little bit of information can make a huge difference when you know nothing, you know, or when you know little. The biggest mistake I think people make is that they think that they are good communicators. They see that their partner's not so good, but they don't realize that they also have a lack of flexibility, a lack of skill. We've all been taught to blame and complain and shame. And that never goes anywhere.
No, that's very toxic for any relationship on any level. You know, it's yeah, I'm a divorcee, and my relationship was one where we're both talking, you know, cross purposes. And I found actually it was better to write to him, because, you know, I want to talk, he's out the door or shutting down. And I found that he read better, and then we could revisit it. But basically what it was is that we were just not tuned into each other's language or each other's needs. And I couldn't give him what he needed. He couldn't give me what I needed. And it ended up, we just lived in conflict, hurting each other. And so we both have to take ownership of that. But at the same time, we didn't have the tools to help us get there. And I think if your relationship is on that toxic level, sometimes you have to go. It's just, you know, not meant to be. But sometimes you've got to be willing to take other steps and find other different ways of communicating with each other. And keeping it simple questions, at least opens the door, right? Opens the door and starts a conversation down a different channel that perhaps you were afraid to talk about.
Yeah. You know, I became a therapist. My last Communication Miracles for Couples book did really well. So I became a therapist that people would go to a lot. And I had a thing that I never saw a couple for more than 2 sessions. I either solved everything in 2 sessions or I gave them all their money back. Right. So I was very good at
resolving the situation. You know? Yes.
So what I saw is that you're right, that couples were often speaking different languages, but they didn't realize it. And I kind of gave them a common third language that allowed them to actually communicate and get each other. And once they had that, they didn't need me anymore.
Right. They had the know-how in order how to open up their own channels. You know, we don't need the psychotherapist that's going to say, you know, the problem, you know, your mother, your father, you know, we don't want that. We just want to know, this is the issue. How come we're not hearing each other?
Right.
You know, we came together in love. You know, the heart's connected, but how come we can't live together? Why is love not enough? And it's because we just don't know how to keep feeding that love, because we somehow run on parallel, you know, on different tracks, and we need those tracks to kind of cross and meet.
Yeah, and we're not born knowing that stuff. You know, we're not born knowing how to play tennis. So if you thought you could go out the first time and be Roger Federer, you'll be disappointed. And it's the same thing with communicating and being able to resolve conflict and getting to a place of love. I think of those as all learned skills.
Yes. I mean, it's the same with parenting. You know, a child's get put in your arms and all of a sudden you're meant to know everything. And you're not going to. You know, that you're going to, how you were raised is, you know, the indication. A lot of it is just trial and error, listening to your child and its needs, learning from each other, you know, other parents. And it's a lot of it is winging it. You know, some people pick up the books, the manuals, and some people just literally go, learn as they go. But when we do speak to someone who's got a great tip for us, have you tried this? I've done that and this works for me. Basically, that's what you've done. You've given those questions and those things. Have you tried this? Try this. It may work for you. And that's what we're looking for, isn't it? Those tips, those tools to help us on our journey.
Yeah, and I think different things work for different people. That's why I like to include a lot of tips. You know, So
Because it's
that,
not every tip that's going to be ticking the box. It's just a few here and a few there that apply to the moment or the need.
yeah, or speak to you in your
Yes.
specific situation.
Yeah. I don't care who you are, how, a lot of people think, well, I don't need to know it. I have a PhD, or I have this, I have that. I don't care who you are. We all need tips. I mean, it's the reason Self-Discovery Radio is around, is to share the expertise and the knowledge from other people, also to celebrate people on their journeys of life and what they've overcome, because what they've learned now becomes tools and information, wisdom, for other people to apply to their own lives. You were going down that path. What hell? How did you survive? What tools and skills did you use to help you get there? And that's the reason I do what I'm doing. And that's the reason why you write the books you write.
Yeah, I was a very shy, suicidally depressed teenager that never didn't have any friends. So that's what got me into this in the first place. And one of the reasons I can teach it is because I have no actual inherent skill in it.
Right.
I had to learn it all step by step.
And that's the best as far as I'm concerned. It really is. I mean, everybody that I have interviewed that has embraced their redirect, because that was your redirect.
Yeah.
You're living hell, going through the pain and the suffering, finding a way through it, not avoiding it. And then from those skills and that knowledge, now being able to apply it and help other people through the journey. It's the best knowledge. It truly is, because people can relate to it, because it's relatable. It's not just a fact in a book, that's just been written by somebody who's totally detached. It's knowledge that comes from your own interpretation of what is needed because you've taken the journey.
Yeah. It's lived experience rather than intellectual experience.
Yes. For me, most certainly, the way I learn, is from other people's experience. And so this is the book that you have out right now, More Love, Less Conflict, but you had the couples book as well. Got to put my glasses back on and see if I can go back and see some of the other books, because I'd like to touch on those. Sorry, blind as a bat, folks. In your 10 books, your first book was The Experience of God. And, let's talk about that, because there is a huge question today. I have one person, and definitely he's summed it up for me, Gus, God, universe, spirit. Because whatever way you look at God, right? And what was that book about?
Well, what you said is that it's good to learn from people who are experts. So I decided I would interview 40 spiritual experts and ask them 10 questions about how to grow spiritually and connect with God. So I asked everybody from Oprah to the late Mother Teresa to the Dalai Lama to Dr. Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, Scott Peck. If you've heard of them, I probably interviewed them.
Yes.
And
some powerful people there.
And you got a variety of different methods. But one question I asked is, what is the meaning and purpose of life? What are we here to do? And what was interesting to me is that all 40 people from different religions, different backgrounds, gave the exact same answer. Now, you can't get 40 people to agree on pizza toppings, much less the meaning of life.
Yes, and I know many people have asked that question, and I want to hear the answer there. But for me, it's living in purpose. What is our purpose?
Well, these 40 people, what they all said is that there are two things to do in life. First thing is to find the peace and love within yourself.
Yes.
Once you've found some of that, the second thing is to help people.
Right. The purpose, the service. Yes.
So, but most of us are not really that focused on finding the peace and love within ourselves.
Yes.
We're focused on manipulating things out here to be the way we want, so we'll feel better. But we haven't really focused on how to get more love, more peace. And so luckily, the technology for doing that keeps getting better. I actually have a podcast called Awareness Explorers. And people can get on iTunes. But it goes into methods for finding peace and love within yourself. And then the More Love, Less Conflict book is really about how to create more love outside, like in your relationships.
Yes.
So I've really tried to focus on what everybody says is the meaning and purpose of life. Because when you're doing that, even if you're just starting, it feels really good to be on the right road.
Right. It's my little metaphor is that we're all an instrument in life, and it's to embrace what our particular gifted instrument is, to learn it to the best perfection we can and bring it to the orchestra, where we then in harmony can create a symphony that then resonates around the world.
Where'd you get that? That's quite a statement there. You say that casually, like, wait, just a second there. There's a lot there.
But we are all a gift, aren't we? We're all given something that is our contribution, that is our purpose. And it's when we step into that love and that peace, we discover what that purpose is. So your purpose is to ask people the questions. That was your gift. From those questions, people discover the answers. But half the time we don't know how to find the answer because we don't know what the question is. So your gift was that, and a beautiful gift to give to people. I have a gift of just interviewing people like you. This is my purpose, bringing to the world those solutions, those answers. Every one of us has our own beautiful instrument, and by diving into it, we do actually discover the love of self through our purpose. Because the more we love what we do, the more we connect to love, the more that love resonates within us, that exudes out of us in passion, right? And that's the thing, is then we can contribute to the orchestra. And that music is just so harmonious that it is so invitational, and it resonates at such a higher vibration, enveloping people with love. So it's step into what really drives you, that you truly love, not just what you're good at and makes the money. What really you connect with love. When you do that, then you discover all that self-love and what your participation and contribution is.
Yeah, I was a psychotherapist, and I was a lousy psychotherapist. I had no patience. That's why I only see people for 2 sessions or less. But I liked writing, and I didn't think I could make a living as a writer. But, I liked writing, so that was something I loved. So I did it, and now I've sold millions of books. But it wasn't something I was doing to make money. It was something I did because I just loved doing it.
Exactly. We talk about riches, and, I say the enrichment of self is your abundance that will provide whatever money you need to keep that abundance alive. And, when we put the emphasis on the enrichment of souls and hearts as the true worth that we have to give to each other, and not the monetary, then we actually truly understand what love is all about.
Yeah. And you look at people like Oprah, who came from nothing and now is a billionaire, most loved person on earth. And, her technique was doing acts of kindness every day and showing her heart. That shows that, this stuff really works, not just in the relationship world, but also works in the business world. Yes. Oh, gosh. I get a lot of people who want to do business with me because, I try to be kind. I listen. I am empathic as much as I'm still working on that. But the number 2 correlation with how much money you make is how good of a communicator you are. The number 1 is how many years of college you go to, and that takes years. Learning how to be a good communicator, you could actually learn it in 1 book or an hour or 2 lecture if you were hungry for it. Yeah. So the fact that it has such a big impact on our lives is, I think, really exciting, because I went from having no friends and being really alone to being rather popular in high school, literally in a month. And it was quite a transformation in my life. And so that kept me excited to keep on learning new things.
And I think that's something that's very, very important, the willingness to keep learning. I'm 63. I'm not resting on my laurels. I learn something every day from interviewing people like yourself. And it's new techniques, new skills, new abilities that I can now share with everyone. And that's the other thing. Share what you learn. When you hear something, they say there's an app for everything. I say I have a show for everything. We've got collectively 1,900 shows here on Self-Discovery Radio. I've done 1,000 myself. Somebody comes up with something on a social media. I've got a show for that. There's the show. It's got the answers that you're looking for. And I'm very happy to be able to share that wisdom. And that's the thing, share the knowledge, right? It's not like, well, I've got this knowledge, I'm going to capitalize on it now. Yes, you can go make a living. Obviously, we've all got roofs over our heads. But the more we share that knowledge, the more abundant everybody becomes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and often you teach what you need to learn. And this was, not an area that I was good at. So I really like the reinforcement of going over it.
Right. And I also like the fact that it's short and sweet with you, because again, it's, a lot of people will go into, I mean, I've seen psychiatrists, all but one ended up on the couch with me, reversal. It just is the way it is. And, it always goes back to your mother. Tell me about your mother, and it's, I just want to deal with the emotion, because unfortunately clinical depression was something a part of me. How do I get out of it? Was the question. And for me, actually, I found how I got out of it just helping other people. Stepping into service, stepping into helping someone else help me out of my own. But it's, there was always trying to go so deep into the layers where, really the problem is just on the surface. If we dealt with that, the layers will take care of themselves. So I like the fact that you have gone very directional. And, with the questions that get to the point that half the time we go, oh, really? I've never asked that of myself. What is my answer? And it stops people for that more than 90 seconds to ask themselves. Be honest with yourself on how you're going to answer this. And that's, I think, one of the first key things, being honest with ourselves and our answer, not what the popular answer is. What's my answer? How do I really perceive this? How am I going to answer this question?
Yeah, the second time I was on Oprah was for a book called The Little Book of Big Questions. That's questions you ask yourself, other people. And I agree that good questions can lead you to really good answers. One of the times with Oprah, we were talking about how good questions can create relationship miracles, because it can open up a closed area and go from conflict to connection in a short period of time. So I certainly agree with that.
It's getting to the point, pinning down. That's the thing is, there may be the answers all out there. It's in the ether, it's right there, and you just don't know how to grasp it because you're not asking the right question. And when you have that right question to ask, the answer's there. Oh, yes, that answer's been there all the time. I just didn't know, I didn't understand it because I wasn't asking the right question.
Yeah.
Right? So questions are very important, and I think we need to question more. And having a book that does it all for us, that's there, and bottom line
like you said, it's nice to have like an app that you have it when you need it.
Yes.
And when you don't need it, it's not bothering you,
I'm also one of these people, a lot of people I interview send me the books, and what I love is being able to go to my library, what do I need to know today, and opening up a page, and there is something. And, very often you could do that with your book, open it up to a question, and you'll actually find that question is extremely relevant to what you need to know in that moment, understanding what we need to know in the now. Somebody could read your book from beginning to end, but that's great. You've got that knowledge stored in your data bank, but by revisiting it, what do I need to know? You will always find that question is very, very relevant to what you need in that moment.
Yeah. Well, speaking of questions, on my site, morelovelessconflict.com, people can get my 12 favorite questions for creating intimacy, and that's free. And it's a good way to start because you can see that these questions, where they're leading, and it kind of gives you a sense of what leads to deep connection. Like obviously appreciation, but certainly understanding people better. I never have couples come into my office and say, gee, we really understand each other well. That's why we want a divorce.
That is not in the frame. No. Yeah, and there's so many divorces that could be avoided if only we actually understood what each other was wanting from the relationship, learn to appreciate each other, and that magic word, thank you.
Yes.
Right. Or two word, thank you.
The average couple waits 6 years between when they're having trouble in a relationship and when they see a counselor. Now, if you did the same thing for like a pain in your body, you'd probably be dead before you saw the doctor. So
yes,
I encourage people to take action before things get to be on life support.
Right. Get the book and start asking the question. I mean, by going through the book, there's going to be one question in there that I've got to ask this question.
Yeah.
And that is a start, right? And, through being willing to ask the questions and the way that you phrase them that then open up that dialogue, you're actually shifting into another gear, and you're developing an ability to ask the questions unemotionally, without any of the angst behind it, just an inquiry that then opens up more to dialogue. And the more you do this, the more proficient you become over it.
Yeah, and there's not just questions, there's fill in the blank statements, there's different exercises that create connection or help to resolve conflict. Most people, the way they resolve conflict is they try to blame their partner and hope that their partner will say, yes, I see it now, you're right. But that never happens.
No, because nobody wants to take blame.
No,
Very often it's, what that person did wasn't to hurt you. As you said, the massaging of the shoulders, it was your way of loving. For her, it was, a fear trigger. And we've got to understand that if our partner's doing something that has brought up something, is it in our past? Or how do we dialogue to them? I know this is coming from love, but we've got to be willing to open up. If we cannot be honest with each other, how can that relationship root and grow?
Yeah, but even honesty is somewhat of a learned skill that happens in partnership.
And trust as you answer each of those questions, isn't it? You build the trust.
Yeah. Trust is really the currency in relationships. Money is a currency in business.
Yes.
Trust is a currency in relationships. So the question is, how do you build trust? And when it's broken, how do you repair it?
Right. And I think it's also mindfulness. I remember imparting some knowledge to my ex that was very vulnerable. And years later, it being thrown back in my face as something that I asked for. And it immediately broke down that trust. Immediately, I felt wounded. And it's very hard to rebuild after that, because you feel if you can look at it that way, how can I trust you with any more of my vulnerability? Yeah. So I think also before we respond to something, I like your take the 5 minute. I know your mouth just wants to open and go blah, blah, blah. How much is that going to cost you? Right. Be mindful and just say, that's big information. Let me just take a moment to digest it.
Yep, absolutely.
Mindfulness is something there. Got to be there. So, my dear, you've got so many books, and we could really go through all of them. But, we're coming up to the end of the hour here, and I want everybody to actually look at the books that you have. And so, actually, could you just run through them all? A little bit of synopsis on each one of them, because it's not just the one book you've got. You've got a library there that can help people. So,
I'll see if I can remember them all. But we talked about the Little Book of Big Questions. That's questions to explore things in yourself and other people. There's the Experience of God, which is all the interviews I did with the spiritual leaders in the world and their answers, everybody from Oprah to the Dalai Lama. There's a book called Shortcuts to Success, which is more about how to have success in the world in terms of health and money and manifestation. There's a book called Find Happiness Now that is the 40 best happiness increasing methods that science says. So there's a lot of ways to increase your happiness. I put them all in one book because I'm lazy and I didn't want to read, I figure people are like me. They don't want to read 40 books. I each have one method. Put them all in one book,
Right.
So there's that book, The Communication Miracles for Couples, that did really well.
Technology of Joy.
Technology of Joy is about the 101 best apps, gadgets, tools, and supplements to bring more delight into your life. That was fun to write.
Real Wealth.
Real Wealth, a spiritual approach to money and work. I also did those orange books, The Complete Idiot's Guide to Awakening Your Spirituality.
I love that.
Yeah.
An Instant Insight.
Instant Insight is another question book, how to have insight into yourself, kind of like self-psychotherapy. So that's most of the books. And then this one I'm really excited about because the response has been tremendous so far. And I think everybody wants more love, less conflict. So that's
and the fact that, again, it's little tools that people can do, the questions, the answer of yourself. And I think a lot of the time we get caught up in, what is the answer? How, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for that, and we don't stop, take the breath, and what is the question? This question is asking you, where are you at right now? And that forget about your 90 seconds or 8 seconds of interaction, and please expand that. But realize that if you want an answer to your life, what is your purpose? What's your contribution? What you're here for? You have got to be willing to invest the time in self, the time in your relationships, your relationship with your partner, relationship in your business, with your family, with your friends. It's all that interaction. It's got to come from a place of love and passion. What is your passion? How many people are going through life going, I'm just not passionate about anything? And isn't that sad? Because that passion leads to love, and that love leads to invitation. So we have to be willing to spend the time on ourselves, and that seems to be something that people have given up altogether. The time, if I can't get it now, forget it, I'm on my way. No, folks, throw away the clock, give yourself the time, be willing to ask the questions of yourself, of each other, and be willing to invest in yourself, because the answers are there, and when they are, you'll understand time's got nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I'll end with another guru story. I was visiting this guru in India, and when I entered the ashram, he pointed to me and said, "You sit in front of me." And he looked at me really close, and he says, "Who are you?" And I didn't know what to say, so I said, "I'm Jonathan Robinson." And he and everybody else in the room started laughing. And he said, "Who are you really?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, I'm a spiritual seeker." And he just goes, "Nah." I said, "Well, I'm a writer." "No." "I'm a therapist." "No." I ran out of answers. I just got quiet. I looked in his eyes, and in his eyes, there was literally light coming out of them. And it was a little scary to look at him in the eye because they were so intense, but I decided to do that. And to my amazement, I was hit with what could be called like a wave of love. And I just started crying. And I didn't even know what I was crying about. I just never felt so much love. And he pats me on the head. He goes like this, and he said, "This love that you feel is who you are in reality. And your job in life is to never forget that."
Right. What a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
We are the love we seek, and we step into our love and be the love. All those other answers fall into place, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
What a lovely way to end things off. All your URLs again, sites, where to get the books, what you've got coming up, everything, please, love.
Well, they can get the book at morelovelessconflict.com, and they can get the 12 questions for free. They can even read the first chapter for free on that website. I have another website called findinghappiness.com that has all my other books. And let's see, I won't be in Victoria anytime soon, but I am in Vancouver every now and then.
I'd love to meet up with you when you're there, for sure.
Okay.
And, this is the thing, folks, is half the time we don't know there's a question that we need to ask, because we don't know what the question is. Well, before you're busy seeking an answer, what is the question? The right question will lead you to the right answer, but the answer has to come from within. And we have to be willing to be vulnerable. We have to be willing to appreciate what comes from ourselves and who we are and how we present ourselves. Don't be afraid. Don't be apologetic. Don't think, how are the people going to perceive me? Be you. Let yourself out. Those that are willing to receive you will receive you. Those that don't, they will pass on by. So be you and embrace you, because the love within you is who you are and is what the world needs. So what the world needs now is love, sweet love. Be the love that we all seek. Thank you so much, Jonathan. This has been a pure delight. It really has. And thank you for just developing something that simplifies things, directionalize things, but opens things up to such an expansion.
My pleasure.
Until next time, folks, bye for now. For more wonderful shows like this, please go to selfdiscoveryradio.com, podcasts, and see our lineup. And if you wish to support us, we have a funded button. Please stay tuned for our next show.